All right, how are you guys doing tonight? Thank you guys for joining. Today we have a very special guest. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a second, but before he does, I just want to let you guys know who this is. This is actually my first mentor when I was at Hampton University when I started back in 2018. This is going to be a really good interview. My first interview of 2023. I have not live streamed in ages. So without further ado, I'm going to let Dr. Joneil Casimir introduce himself. Take it away.
Appreciate for the gas, man. Golly.
Yeah.
How you guys doing? My name is Joneil Casimir. Um, Originally born in Long Island, New York. Came to Orlando, Florida at 12. I'm 30 years of age. I graduated about 3 years ago from Hampton University.
Cool. Cool. All right, guys, that's Joneil for us. And so Joneil, we went to Hampton. We were back at Hampton. I was there in 2018, started there. You were my mentor. And, there's a lot of things that I felt that was very common between us. And I'm really glad that we were able to partner up and be mentors. Some people get through this journey really easily, really smooth, right? Other people, it's a little bit more challenging. And for me, like I said, this is my third school, so I just want to know how hard was PT school for you?
Man, it was tough, man. Especially going out of state. So most of my school years, my college years, high school years, I was usually surrounded by a lot of friends, family. So whenever I did have that stressful times, I always had people to go back and help kind of release some of that stress. So PT school is no joke, man. A lot of studying, a lot of studying.
Oh yeah.
You know, um, from 1 to 10, I'll probably say it was probably like an 8 my first two
Oh
years
yeah.
in Hampton. After my head, I feel like most of the time my head was above water. But you meet certain people that will kind of help get you to that next level. They'll teach you that proper study life balance to kind of be able to help facilitate that process of schooling and studying.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Janelle, just kind of tell us. I'm actually curious. I'm sure I've talked to you about this before, but we can also talk to the audience about it. What made you
Mm.
consider physical therapy? I know this is kind of like, I mean, it's not a new field, but it's funny enough. Everybody knows what chiropractors are, right? But there are still some people to this day. I say physical therapy depending on what kind of population around, and they're like, oh, like a personal trainer or something like that. Like, how did
Yeah.
you find out about the field, and what made you want to pursue it once you did find out about it?
Okay, that's a good question. So, growing up, I always knew I wanted to do something in the medical field. My mom was a nurse. She's coming from the island. She's Haitian. My dad's an engineer. So they were always,
Doctor.
school, 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 school,
Yeah.
and like if it's not a lawyer, then doctor. So it's just either A or B. Um, it was probably around, let's say 12 is when I decided I want to do physical therapy. So actually, what kind of brought me to that road to physical therapy is actually a kind of long story, so I'm gonna cut it short a little bit. So growing up, my mom she had rheumatoid arthritis after the birth of my sister. So that kind of ended her nursing career kind of early. So as the disease progressed, it kind of debilitated her. Growing up, I watched my mom, you know, in a wheelchair. Sometimes, some days she's just bedbound.
Wow.
Her being a nurse, she always taught me, certain passive range of motion. Me not knowing that, that's something I'm gonna be doing as a physical therapist. So did a lot of passive range of motion stuff just to keep those joints nice and mobilizing. And mind you, I'm like 10 doing this. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So we moved to Florida when I'm around 12 years old. She gets bilateral knee replacements, and there was a physical therapist came in our house, helped transition her from that surgery post-op up to walking after like 4 or 5 years where she was just in a wheelchair. And a lot of the stuff that I seen the home health therapist did was stuff that I was doing as a kid, and I was just like, oh wow, like this is actually a field where I kind of was almost groomed into. So, I had a conversation with the home health physical therapist. She kind of educated me on what to expect as a physical therapist. What I didn't know what to expect from a physical therapist was actually how much schooling I need, how much studying I need. At the time, I had no idea it was a doctor. I kind of thought it was like a 4 year thing, get into the program, but it was just a lot more work than I thought originally it was.
Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that. So that's a really personal story you have there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you said 4 to 5 years of therapy?
So no, so she was debilitated for 4 to 5 years. So she wasn't walking. She was just in a wheelchair
Oh,
and
okay.
stuff like that. So during that time, like I'm doing passive range of motion with
Right.
her, doing. She was a nurse, so she was privy of the stuff that she needed to be done, but I didn't know it was actually like a science behind
Right.
it.
Right.
So it was not until after she had like a bilateral knee replacement, a home health therapist, obviously did more than long arc quads. They walked her consistently, checked her vitals, did squats with her. A lot of strengthening in the lower extremities to kind of get her to the next level. And growing up, I'm also like interested in sports like basketball, football, and all that stuff. So I was like, all right, this kind of ties into like science and sports. So I was like, I could get behind this field definitely.
Okay. So you were able to kind of see that progression from her just being able to basically go from almost being like, debilitated in a wheelchair to
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
being able to ambulate, walk around and stuff like that. So that was kind of
yeah.
what sparked your interest.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. Because growing up, in New York, so at the time in New York, a lot of the technology wasn't there. Most of the doctors told her, "Hey, we can't do this. Like the surgery is risky because they said her bones are pretty much brittled and all that." So they kind of advised her to move to Florida. Said the sun will probably be easy on the
Right.
joints and all that.
Yeah.
And then she kept looking for like orthopedic surgeons to help,
Uh-huh.
with this process.
That makes sense. Okay. All right. So let's get into some of the interesting stuff. So now that you're finished physical therapy school, and a lot
Yeah.
of the interviews before this, we've talked about, just the difficulties of, PT school. I remember, man, how hard Hampton was when I got there, man. Um,
What class did you? What class? I don't mind. What class did you think that you thought was gonna be a breeze, but going in there was like, oh, damn, there's more.
I don't think any I didn't think anything was going to be a breeze, but I will say, like the first semester, I was paranoid, man. So realistically,
Yeah,
maybe I thought maybe like a test and measures class would have been easier. I'm like, oh, you're doing a little
yeah,
goniometry, okay. So
yeah,
I think I was in a rude awakening for that class, particularly how specific they were for the labs and some of the safety
yeah.
fails that they would give you. But I think that second semester, I underestimated
Mhm.
research. I under Dr. Owen's class. I was like, this is a research
Yeah,
class. I don't think it was worth
yeah.
as many credits as some of the other classes like neuro and stuff. And I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was a mistake.
No joke. Yeah,
That was a
yeah.
mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely underestimated research. Um, and even here at the school that I'm at right now,
Mhm.
research, man.
No joke.
This is a
I
class,
mean,
man. It's a tough class.
yeah,
I think students sometimes because it's a doctor program, there are certain things outside of just studying, the body that you're gonna have to know. And I don't know if students sometimes are like really fully prepared for that. At least I wasn't. I was thinking my struggles were going to come mainly from the classes that had specifically to do with physical therapy, which neuro provided me enough challenges. You know what I'm saying? But I will say that, those side classes, sometimes those are the ones that can get you, man.
yeah. They'll sneak up on you. Yeah,
They will sneak
yeah,
up
sneak
on you.
up
Yeah.
on you.
So
Yeah,
you went to Hampton, you finished about 3 years ago, graduated. So after you graduated, just tell us, like, you went back. So did you go back? You went back to Florida. You were working a little bit. Kind of tell us how your journey was after you graduated. Did you take the NPTE before you graduated so you could get right onto the field? Did you take a
yeah.
couple months off after you graduated? Did you go straight to work? How was that journey for you?
So the interesting part is, I guess most of the students around that era were doing a new transition, especially with COVID happened. So COVID put like a wrench in a lot of people's plans. So I didn't even get to finish my clinicals
Oh wow.
entirely. I think I was finished. I think clinicals was supposed to be like, I believe maybe like 12 weeks, and I only did 4 weeks of clinicals. That kind of that kind of that kind of put almost like a stop on the original plan I had. My goal was to finish clinicals, take a week break, and then start studying for MPTE. That was my original plan. Um, but once that COVID hit, man, I'm not gonna lie, I'm just when everything kind of stopped, I just was on lazy mode. I
Yeah.
just kind of relaxed
Yeah.
a little bit, let my brain kind of. I took it was like almost a vacation for me a little
Okay.
bit. I think I kind of used the COVID to my advantage to at least let my brain reset. I felt like I felt like PT school, clinicals, going back home was just too much overload.
Yeah.
At least there was just too much sensory information going in my head right now. So I kind of took almost a month break before I transitioned to studying. Um, I had multiple studying methods to be honest.
Uh-huh.
The first 2 weeks I kind of studied on my own,
Mm-hmm.
doing score builders a little bit. It was beneficial in my opinion, but I feel like I'm one of those people that needs that visual learning, that auditory learning, so I kind of transitioned away from score builders and I just used Final Frontier.
Yep.
And the professor that was running it, he did a pretty good job as far as preparing me to take that MPTE. I think I probably studied maybe like 3 months,
Okay.
studied for 3 months before I took the MPTE.
Okay.
Yeah, passed it on my first try, so
Good.
that was good.
So you took
Yeah.
3 months. I've had a professor said you need to take a whole year to study for it.
Studied for
I
a year.
consider myself an average, maybe
What's up?
naturally below average student, right? Um, what would you
Oh, sorry.
recommend in terms of time, studying for that test? And do you feel like the preparation or the information, the teaching you got at Hampton, do you feel like it gave you a really good foundation so when you did take the test, it was kind of more review?
See, for other students in the class, that was, Hampton, they were able to, for some, this depends on this individual. Like for me, I'm always within the moment.
Hmm.
All the information doesn't click until after, So
Right.
like
That's me.
while I'm in the studying, like just a lot of information thrown at me, and everything doesn't, I step away from that bubble. Everything that I learned and that was taught, it all makes sense. So for me, like everything that I learned from Hampton, I'll see it. I'll see it like when I'm studying. Like, okay, I remember a professor talking about this. Okay, that makes sense now. This makes sense now. But I need me personally. I feel like me and you are the same as far as like study habits. I need to have different types of learning where it could just stick to my brain. Like I will listen to a lecture, then I'll listen to the lecture again, take notes. After I'm done with that, I'll re-review the notes that I written down. So I guess it's just more just individual based, in my opinion.
Right.
Originally, when I first was studying for the MPT, I thought I was like, oh man, like there's some just, I just need a month to prepare for this. And then when I looked at it, oh, maybe I need a year to prepare for this. I think it's
Yeah.
just kind of one of those things. So I always tell, like something my aunt always told me is that it's just an exam. It's not going to kill you,
Hmm.
you know. So that kind of took a lot of pressure off of me as far as being able to step in, take the
Hmm.
exam, and if I fail, I could take it again.
Right.
I have complete faith in my abilities. What I learned, what I learned, the information that was given to me by Hampton, by friends, peers, that I was going to pass the course and the exam. So
Okay. That sounds good, man. So, how was that transition? Because I know when everybody leaves PT school, it's like, you're going off, you're doctor, you're going to save the world and stuff like that, right? But talk a little bit about, because,
mhm.
we were talking on the phone the other day. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you ran into once you graduated. You're a young black African American, man. And you were even talking
Yeah,
about your uniform, right? So people would mistake you
yeah,
for,
yeah.
different things. Talk a little bit about that experience, having to work so hard for 7 years, right? And then having
Yeah.
to kind of deal with some of that.
So after graduating Hampton, I took the MBTE. I didn't start looking for a job maybe uh till December. I honestly don't remember the time when everything kind of meshed a little bit. But I didn't start looking for a job maybe a few months after I actually passed the actual MPTE.
Mm,
My first, I always tell myself, I'm not doing sniff. I'm never doing sniff. Blah, blah, blah. But you know, that kind of storyline changes when you look at, you know, the loans and
mm,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
So like, my initial thought was like, all right, I'm going in for the money. That was my original,
Right.
you know, plan as far as looking for jobs. Um, there's so many PT jobs out there, bro. It was ridiculous. It was at least in Florida, it just felt like it was a lot. So I actually applied at a SNF, a skilled nursing facility not too far from where I live. The original PT left, so going in, I was technically going to go into a position where I was the only physical therapist.
Oh wow.
So I didn't have a mentor.
Really?
My supervisor was a physical therapist herself, but she wasn't treating. She was kind of more in the management position.
Purely.
So
Purely management.
yeah,
Wow.
exactly. And then the PTA, the original PTA left. So now the PTA is also a student.
Oh,
So the new PTA is a PTA.
whoa.
So he just recently graduated. So we're both. So he's like, I'm 27 around the time. He's probably like 21, 22. And, you know, we're both like African Americans. They're both Haitians, coincidentally, you
Really?
know. And we're just, yeah. So we're just, we're both trying to figure it out. But thankfully, like the team that we had was like awesome, was great. You know, I had an occupational therapist. She came in the same time. So a lot of people in the physical therapy were kind of leaving because of layoffs, and sometimes some of the people were kind of nervous the whole COVID as well. The facility kind of had like a COVID outbreak, so
Right.
some of the individuals, so they kind of needed like a change, you know, in management and staff. But I had a great mentor as far as an occupational
Mm,
therapist. She taught me how to be a good clinician.
okay.
She, you know, showed me the ropes as far as, you know, how to be a good professional and all that. So, like you're saying, going in, you know, oh, I got a doctorate. I'm a PT. I'm the big guy on campus. You know, you get humbled real quick. You know,
Ah,
you get humbled quick. You know, so a lot of times I'm going into patients' rooms where people think like I'm the custodian or I'm the caregiver
mm.
or maintenance man. You know what I mean? So when I go in and say, "Oh no, my name is Joneil Casimir. I'm the physical therapist," and huh? They're like, you know, So it's just like okay, whatever. But they were pretty. The patients I had, they were pretty chill. They were pretty good as far as the skilled nursing facility. I enjoyed my time out there. Um, I going in there though, as far as the skilled nursing facility, it was kind of almost nerve wracking. Again, it was when COVID was fresh, so I did see a lot of COVID patients where I'm just thinking, oh God, like how do I fully protect myself?
Right.
We didn't study for this, we weren't prepared, so it was just a lot of, you know, it was almost going in there blind, kind of my first time as a physical therapist. So
Gotcha. All right, my
and
last
then
question, man.
sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry, were you saying something?
Oh no, I forgot to transition. So
Yeah.
after that, I transitioned into outpatient physical
Mm.
therapy. So
So you went from
my
skilled
goal,
nursing to outpatient. Okay.
outpatient, yeah. So my goal was more, instead of money, it was more of how do I become a better clinician. So I
Okay.
looked for an individual that had good credentials, that was
Mm.
well known in the community. So I realized that my goals and plans changed for myself, not so much about the money, but more as how can I better myself as a clinician to help the next person.
Mm.
That's originally why I went to physical therapy, was to be able to play an impact in someone else's life. So yeah.
Gotcha, man. That's awesome. So now talk to us, and this is just my last question. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing now with the travel, because travel PT,
Sure.
we were talking a little bit about it. Tell me some of the perks, the benefits, maybe some of the
Mhm.
personalities that you think it would be, suited for. Of course, there are
Mhm.
people who are married, there are people who are single coming out of PT school. So what are some of the, I guess,
Mhm.
pros and cons, that made you want to go into travel physical therapy, and how are you enjoying it?
So I'm now a travel therapist. Some of the pros that I've noticed so far as travel physical therapy, the biggest thing that kind of grabbed my attention was more of the contracts. So you're doing like 13 weeks. So I, so I think my biggest issue as far as working with physical therapist, sometimes I just didn't have that work-life balance. I didn't know when to take a day off. I didn't. Sometimes it felt like there was no end at sight some days, you know? And I feel like for me, it just burned me out faster than intention needed to be. So with travel physical therapy, I feel like I have a little bit more freedom, a little bit more of a say as far as where I want to take my career. I feel like some of the pros is you're able to jump between sniff, hospital, outpatient. You're able to see a variety of settings, meet a variety of people. You have multiple mentors, so you're shaking a different hands. That's a great way to network. Um, some of the biggest cons is obviously just moving, in my opinion. You always have to find far as like, okay, let's say I'm going to Georgia. Now I have to find housing assignments and stuff like that. I find that to be like a big headache. Um, do get comfortable. So, switching from different settings could be a little bit nerve wracking, especially if you're a type of individual that likes stability. So if you're an individual that likes stability, maybe travel for you. I could be wrong. For me, I don't mind that dynamic change as far as switching from setting to setting. So I feel like people that goes into travel tend to be single individuals, or if they do have like a partner, they're both into travel. That's from what I've seen. So
Okay,
yeah.
cool, cool. Ladies, he's single. Dr. Casimir on the stage. Nah, that's cool, man. So just before we wrap it up, I would just like for you to just give, any word of advice. You're literally like right there. I like to talk to the people who are. Sometimes you have people who are like way in
Mhm.
front of you. Sometimes you have people who are behind you. And then sometimes you have people that are just a couple steps, in front of you. And I feel like some of those people you can really learn from because you are going into a field like, and you're still relatively in that, fresh phase. You're not jaded about the experience yet, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you're still kind of learning. What advice would you just give to a person that is kind of getting ready to transition from studying, going crazy, always having I'm not worried about things, but having assignments to turn in, then to transition into the workforce.
So I think my biggest thing, if I could tell myself then now, is just to live in the
Mm.
moment. Just live in the moment, be present. Because there's some days where I'm working, just like, oh man, it wouldn't be bad being a student again.
Oh, really?
Sometimes, sometimes, at least for me. But just live in that moment, man. There's no
Right.
rush. Your time will come. Um, Another word of advice will just be, trust the process, trust your instinct. Sometimes you may feel a little bit iffy about, applying to certain jobs. You feel like you're not ready, but you just gotta trust yourself. You did all this years of schooling, you know the information, and even if you're not confident, you have at least with PT. There's a lot of clinicians that are pretty good at providing informations to get you to that next level where you want to be.
Right.
So just trust the process and don't stress. Live in that moment.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, this is Mentality ID, DPT Talk, episode 21, first episode of 2023. I really appreciate you, Dr. Joneil Casimir, for coming on, and also just, when I was at Hampton for mentoring me, for giving me that encouragement, because man, you know how I was, man. I was stressed out of this world,
Yeah,
the
man.
first time moving away from
It's no,
home
it's no.
and then going into an environment where the academic rigor was where it was. But nevertheless, thank you for this interview. Thank you for your time, Guys, if you want to connect with Dr. Joneil Casimir, his Casimir, excuse me, his information and email, generic emails at the bottom. And if you want to reach out to him, you can go on my Instagram page and I will tag him in one of these clips for the interview. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Signing off. Take care.